Have you ever needed to be reminded? I mean, somebody to tell you something you've always known. Tell you something that you should have known, but for some reason, you forgot. Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Burns, and thank you for joining me today on Tuesday Tips, Practical Tips from Scripture. We're studying today in the book of Proverbs, and you can go ahead and turn to Proverbs chapter 6. That's where a reminder is going to be given after some good instruction is given before. I want to remind you today as we get going who sponsors and who takes care of this program. It's the Jurong Church of Christ, and they're at 120 Boon Lay Drive in Singapore. Go visit their website at jurongcoc.org, and there you can find all sorts of information about this program, Tuesday Tips, and other things that are happening throughout the week on Sundays, and all sorts of things that you might want to know about. Now, the studio we're currently in is the Digital Mission Work Studio, and you can go find us on Facebook as well. And you can also visit our website at digitalmissionwork.com, and there you can find all sorts of projects and handouts and outlines and different things. But coming soon, we're going to release a project that's going to take us about 12 years to finish. That's if we're just moving really fast. But we're going to release a project that hopefully will be very beneficial to you, and it's going to be free. Now, as we start today, we're in the book of Proverbs. We're in Proverbs chapter 6. Here's the title. It's time to wake up. Sometimes adults have to adult. Sometimes we need to remember the things that we've always known. And sometimes even as we are growing and aging and maturing, we need to be told about things that we always knew. Now here's the divisions of Proverbs chapter 6. You have two different areas. Number one, in verses 1 through 19, you have this idea of practical warnings. These are scenes of a father and a mother again telling their son, hey son, don't miss these. And then in the latter part of the chapter, verses 20 through 35, he's going to be asking a question. Have you already forgot? Did you already forget? That's what's going to happen to us today. Let's get to the practical warnings, and we're going to start in verse 6. Go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. The first part of this chapter is about not giving your word to things that you can't keep up with, not giving your life to things you can't keep up with, and he's telling you you need order in your life. The ant who does not have any hierarchical structure, does not have any great leader, he says go to the ant, look at the ant, and see all the things that the ant can do in preparing for its winter, taking care of its harvest, looking toward the things that need to be taken care of. He says, there's your practical life. Look forward into your life and don't be lazy. Go to the ant, you sluggard, he says. But then he says this, verse 6. How long will you slumber, O sluggard? When will you rise from your sleep? A man described the sluggard of the book of Proverbs. His name was Curtis Cates. Maybe you've heard of him. He was an instructor of the Memphis School of Preaching, and when I was in that school, the classroom was arranged with 4 different areas of which you could sit. There was the front row, it was smaller, and then the second row got a little bigger, and the third row got a little bigger, and then there was a 4th row in the back. It was smaller. I sat in the 3rd row. I still know right where I sat. And he was teaching, and he was talking about the sluggard and the lazy man, the person in Proverbs. And he cleans off the front table, and he lays down on top of that table, and he folds his arms over his chest, and he just goes silent. He said, how many of y'all got it? If we're willing to do nothing, nothing will happen. If we're lazy, we will be lazy. If we're unprepared, we will not be ready. There's Proverbs 6 as it opens up, and he's telling you about things that we need to know when conflict comes, when problems come, when things we need to deal with exist. But then he says this. He says, don't miss this. It's a practical warning. These 6 things the Lord hates. 7 are an abomination to him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that are swift to running to evil, a false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord among the brethren. He says, don't be lazy in your life, and he says, don't miss these things of which the Lord hates. Now, we have taken the word hate and we've kind of brought it down to our level. I hate this, or I hate that. And we mean we just don't like it. But here, the Lord doesn't say, I hate it. Oh, I just don't like it. Here are 7 things that he vehemently opposes. Look at this list and ask yourself the question, do we have a problem with pride? Do we tell the truth? Do we kill the innocent? Are our hearts wicked? Are our feet taking us to evil? Do we love evil things? Are we a false witness? But this is this last one. Do I sow problems, discord among the brethren? These are practical matters, and that's how he opens the chapter. Now, I want to say this in the middle of our lesson. I want to give you 2 questions that you can take with you in this week. Because the latter part of our chapter is going to be a revision, a return to something we've already talked about in our Proverbs study. So here's 2 questions I want you to take with. How can we be more prepared? And what I mean by that is, how can we serve more? How can we help greater? How can we be people who we look at our lives and we don't sit here and we go, oh no, what do I do? But we know what we need to do as a Christian, and how do we dedicate our lives to Christ? Here's number 2. What happens when we're wrong? Now, I don't know about you. I know this of me. But every now and then I'll say this to my wife, and she knows exactly what I mean, so don't you take it wrong, because she doesn't. I'll say to her, you know, honey, I was wrong. That only happens every now and then. Because how many times are we actually wrong in life? A lot more than we're willing to admit. And these practical warnings, 19 verses, tell us, get your life together. Now, here's something I want you to notice as well. We're not under the Old Testament law. But God still wants us to get our lives together. That's what the New Testament is about as well. And sometimes, as we're going to talk about here in just a minute, we forget that. Now, I want you to remember how we've talked about a couple of phrases in our study. It's about a father and about mothers, and they're telling their son, here's how you can live, because we've been there, we've done that, we've failed, and we've had to get back up. He said, don't follow in our footsteps in all the things that we have done, because you can be better. The last part of this chapter, chapter 6, the question is going to be proverbially asked, did you already forget? I know I have forgotten more in my life than I'd like to admit. And maybe this person had that problem too. My son, keep your father's command. And do not forsake the law of your mother. Bind them continually upon your heart. Tie them around your neck. Have you ever needed to do something for someone, so you wrote yourself a note? Now, when Kelly and I lived in Pulaski, Tennessee, we currently live in Sparta, Tennessee, but what I would do is when I needed to do something and I didn't need to forget it, I would take a Post-it note and I'd write down that thing I needed to do, and I would go to the back door. It was the door I always left from. And I would put that on one of the 6 divisions of that window. I'd put it right in the middle of that window. And I'd have to see that note so it was there, and it couldn't leave me. That's what he's saying here. Son, your father, your mother, that they've showed you how to live. Don't forget it. Bind it on your heart. Don't let it flee from you. Tie it around your neck, so that way when you think and when you see yourself, every time you know what he's getting ready to talk about. You know how you've been trained to live. Now, I want to say something carefully yet forcefully. This could be your problem. It could be mine. I know this. It is a problem in our world. I know this. You'll know it in just a moment. We've already studied this. And it is going to surprise you as it surprises me how many times in the book of Proverbs the writer says, don't give yourself away. Don't give yourself away. In this scene, after he talks about the law of the mother and father, bind it on your heart. Why? To keep you from the evil woman, from the flattering tongue of a seductress. Do not lust after her beauty in your heart, nor let her allure you with her eyelids. Many times we'd look at these verses, verse 24, oh, that's just young love. No, that's not young love. That's young lust, maybe. Father and mother to the son. It's lust. Don't seek after what's going to corrupt you. Now, I believe, as I think you will, he's literally talking about a man. Here's a father and mother writing to their son. Here's a man, a young man. And the father's saying, don't get lost in the flattering speech. Don't get lost in her beauty. Don't get lost when she flutters those eyelids. Now, men, you'll understand that in a real interesting way because, men, you were created as a visual creature. Ladies, you were created as an emotional creature. That doesn't mean one is greater than the other. But men, you probably struggle with this more than ladies do. But here's something I know. Both in Proverbs and in the New Testament, there's something that's true. Men and women struggle with this issue. We struggle for fleeting relationships. We struggle to seek after something that is not ours. And let me tell you, beauty will destroy. He says, did you already forget? Now, what's interesting to me is what's going to take place. He says, you ain't going to get away with it, son. Verse 34 and 35. For jealousy is a husband's fury. Therefore, he will not spare in the day of vengeance. He will accept no recompense, nor will he be appeased, though you give many gifts. All right, you've been caught. Somebody else knows. And problems are on your future. Did you already forget? Now, here's what's interesting about this. I know the latter part of Proverbs 6 is talking about this physical, intimate relationship that's designed to be for one man, one woman for life. That's the Bible concept of intimacy in the physical, sexual form. But when we broaden our minds to this, we should have no relationships outside of our marriages, of which compromise our marriages. We should have no relationship outside of our faith that compromises our faith. And if we take it to a bigger extent, when sin enters your heart, we will face problems. And that's why we've called today's episode, It's Time to Wake Up. It's time to wake up. Because it may not just be this issue that you face. But I know this. We can be faithful to God. That's really what I want you to learn about. I want you to learn how to be faithful to God. And if you're in the area of Asia, especially if you're in Singapore, you go see the folks over at the Jurong Church of Christ. They're at 120 Boon Lay Drive. And you go to them, and I'll tell you something they'll do. They'll open their Bible. And they will use their Bible to show you what God says, not what they say. And we'll learn together that it is time to wake up. And that's today's Tuesday tip. Practical tips from Scripture.